people here from the region?
We have EPA, we have Ensign, we have Emerald, who's Greenlight, GWS Greenlight. We should have a representative from Scotland.
No, we wait for 10 minutes. They're not here, sir.
briefing is called by GWI to inform you of some of the measures that we have taken to deal with this weather phenomenon, as well as to inform the citizenry of what they can do to cope with it. At the head table, we have Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Sheikh Baksh, and to his left, Ms. Denise Wilford, and Mrs. Wilford is the Manager of Water Resources and Climate Change Adaptation. We have Mr. Ramchan Jailal, Director of Hinterland Services, and to my far left, Mr. Sunil Dat Baran. And of course, right next to me is Angela Franklin, and she's a hydrologist at GWI. Without further ado, we'll cut to the chase, and I give the floor over to Mr. Baksh to make his presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mohabir. I want to welcome you, members of the media, to this press briefing. We thought it opportune to brief the population on what effect the current El Niño situation is having on the water sector in all the regions, including those in the hinterland, as well as on the coastal belt. Now, we have done a thorough assessment of the situation, and we have set up a special committee within GWI because we have a water resources and climate adaptation unit, which is staffed by Ms. Wolford, who's the manager there, and we have Ms. Franklin, who's the hydrologist. And we also have Mr. Jailal as the hinterland director, and Mr. Baran. So we are in close touch with all the personnel in the regions of Guyana, GWI personnel, and we are closely monitoring the effects of this drought season, which we are now experiencing. The first point I wish to make is that we are working closely with the CDC, that is the Civil Defense Commission, which has formed a national team comprising Ministry of Agriculture, NDIA, and the GWI is included there. And they've been paying visits to all the regions to assess the situation on an ongoing basis. We're happy to be part of that team. So we have first-hand information of what is taking place. Firstly, I wish to deal with the hinterland, which is more severely affected by the El Niño phenomena. In all the regions, we have seen a depletion of water supply in the surface water supply, that is the springs and creeks, which is adversely affecting populations in those areas. One which has been highlighted recently is the depletion of the Salbora Creek in Region 8, Madhya Region 8, which has depleted about 80% of the water supply and has the potential of creating hardship for the population there. We have 2 wells in Madhya, and we are moving on an emergency basis to drill a new well, another well at Madhya to relieve the hardships that may be encountered by the population. In the other regions, in Region 1, for example, Mabaruma and Matthews Ridge, Port Kaituma, and all these areas are experiencing low water supply through the depletion of the springs, because they largely depend on springs for their water supply, although they all have also wells. Like in Port Kaituma, we have some wells, but these are not high-performing wells, I must state, because of the geological formations in those areas. In Region 7, we have Kamarang and Jawala, where there has been a reduction in the static level of the wells in those areas. Also in Region 8, as I mentioned, we have the Madhya situation, and also at Kurukubaru, and El Paso. El Paso is in the Madhya region. In Region 9, what we have found is that the hand-dug wells are drying up. GWI embarked in the drilling of deep wells, climate-resilient wells, and these seem to be standing up as we speak now. And those communities that have the hand-dug wells, the deep wells drilled by GWI, they are not experiencing the kind of hardships as in the other areas. The water supply has, the level of service has gone down in those areas, but they're assured of, at this point in time, I must emphasize, of water supply. And that was because of the vision of GWI to drill climate-resilient wells, meaning wells, deeper wells in those areas. So overall, this is a situation in the hinterland, and as you may be aware, we have a target of drilling wells in all the communities in the hinterland to achieve 100% access to water from these wells. It's a challenging task, but we are already moving ahead. This year alone, we are projecting to drill 40 wells, and next year between 50 to 60 wells to meet the target by the end of 2025, so that the population can be assured of a water supply, a stable water supply in those areas. As we come to the coastal belt, what has been happening because of the drought is that there has been an extremely high demand for water by not only households but also the farming community, which is relying on GWI for the water supply. Places like Bath, West Coast, Berbice, and many other areas on the highways and so on, they're experiencing some hardships because of the excessive demands. And our wells are producing water at the maximum at this point in time. But importantly, because of the high demand and to some extent the water losses, wastage of water in many parts of the coastline, in particular many communities, and here we want to appeal to the population, the residents of those areas, to be more prudent and cautious in their use of this precious water supply resource, and so that everybody can enjoy a level of service, an adequate level of service. Overall, in Regions 2, the supply of water is stable, except in some areas. Some wells are being maintained, so we do have some problems in one or two areas, lower level of service. They're all receiving water supply. In Regions 3, the situation is also stable, although in some areas we do have, and GWI is working on this, lower level of service than normal. In Regions 4, Georgetown in particular, the water supply is normal, and we have observed through the monitoring of the Lama Canal, through which between 60 and 80% of the water supply in Georgetown is provided. There has not been a drop, and this is a good thing. This is the good thing of the water supply in the Lama Canal, and therefore residents in Georgetown should not be adversely affected through the El Nino phenomenon. But there are other reasons that some areas may experience a lower level of service. For example, damage to our infrastructure is one in some parts of Georgetown also. So in regions 5 and 6, again, they may experience a lower than normal level of service. We are supplying water through the wells on a 24-hour basis and at a maximum level. We are engaged in intensive maintenance works on the wells. We must remember that some of these wells are 40 and 50 years old, and we do have a well replacement program on stream over the next, continuing over the next few years, to ensure that we can supply the population with a good water supply as we move on. But not only the El Nino impact is affecting residents on the coastland. Importantly, the power outages is really affecting water supply in all of the regions on the coastal belt. And this is a matter which has been addressed by the utility, but it is impacting on the power distribution in those areas through these outages. And remember, when you do have an outage, it takes some time to restore the water balance in these areas, and air pressure is affecting the water supply also. So we are hoping that this situation can be stabilized, especially over the last couple of days at Bartica. We know what has happened there, and that has GWI had a good water supply available, but because of the effect on our wells and the treatment plants, it has affected the supply of water. In Region 6, we also have had disruptions in the water supply, and consumers have been complaining on that. So apart from the power outages, we also have the situation where contractors are damaging our infrastructure in many areas, in the building of the roads, in works in the drainage system. They have been affecting our water supply, and in many instances the contractors just disappear. So we are taking a very strong view of this matter, and will take all necessary action to ensure that this is minimized, and we're working closely with the Ministry of Public Works to minimize, if not eliminate, this situation where contractors damage our infrastructure, the large pipelines, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch pipelines, bringing hardships to the population through the disruption of water supply and affecting the level of service. So we are looking at this. We're engaging the Public Works Ministry, NDIA, the Central Housing and Planning Authority, and so on, to ensure that they work closely with GWI. We're prepared to do so that we reduce these incidents of hardship to the residents in those areas. So we are appealing to residents to report when these things happen. Try to identify the contractors, because they will have to pay for the damages. We have been doing so on an ongoing basis, where contractors are charged fees and they have to pay up to us, or we have to take other measures to ensure compliance. So we're appealing to residents, customers, to ensure that they report these matters and identify those contractors who are damaging our infrastructure. Again, what in this time period, the water losses, we have to bring down the water losses. So we're appealing to customers to be very prudent, as I mentioned before, in their use of water. And we know that they need more water. The demand is there because of the dry season, and many of them are watering plants but they have to be careful in that regard. Washing vehicles and so on, reduce the frequency of doing so. But overall, we are of the opinion that the level of service has been maintained. There has been a drop of level of service in certain areas. And I want to pinpoint especially the East Bank corridor. And I know the population there has been suffering with very low water supply. We've been doing a lot of work to bring back the situation to normalcy as a result of the collapse of a well. This has all started with the collapse of the well at Diamond. And this has affected the water supply in areas, Peters Hall, Prospect, Diamond, and to some extent parts of Grove. But we have been working hard. We have a new well being drilled. The drilling is completed at Covent Garden, and the well is being developed. We are hoping that by the end of October that well will be functional, and that will bring good relief to the population of Diamond and surrounding areas like Prospect, new housing areas also. So we're very hopeful of that. Secondly, the well at Diamond has been completed, the drilling. We're installing the conductor casing, and before the end of this month, the casings and the screens will be installed, and development will commence with that well, which is at a depth of over 700 feet, between 700 and 800 feet. We have experienced challenges in the drilling of that well, especially because of the unusual the clay formation. The unusual clay formation tended to collapse at various points in the drilling. We've overcome that situation, and as I said, we should start developing that well by the end of September, so that sometime by the end of October, so that by November, I would say by the end of November, that well should be up and running, all things being equal. So that is the situation. We understand the situation. We apologize to the residents of those areas. We've had many complaints. We're trying our best. We have put a larger pump at the Providence Well Station to pump more water, albeit it's raw water, into the system to bring some relief. And currently, we are going to make some interconnections between the Eccles and Providence well stations and treatment plant. These works should commence within another week or two to channel some more supply of water to the Diamond area. Importantly also, we will be drilling a new well at Grove to ensure water security going into the future. And a new well has been completed at Eccles and will be put into the distribution system very shortly. So all of these are things which GWI has been working on in recognition of the problems on the East Bank corridor. So once again, we want to appeal for the conservation of water. We are monitoring the situation, working along with the CDC to ensure the minimization of hardships in the water supply and an improvement in the level of service. Our commercial services are looking at these matters. Our operations department, headed by Mr. Baran, is working with the regional engineers to have a prompt response to complaints by customers on these matters. I know there's been complaints of slow response times, and we have actually read the right act, so to speak, to our supervisors, our staff, our managers, to ensure prompt response to customer complaints, not only in terms of water supplies, but also in other areas of concern to these residents. So overall, these are some of the matters which I wanted to talk about, and we will now want to open up for questions by the media, and myself and the team here will endeavor to provide you with answers. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Batch. That's a very informative presentation. Members of the media, the floor is open to questions.
Mr. Batch, you spoke about two resilient countries where well that was built in the hinterland with them facing hardship. Is it only two climate resilient well that you have right now, the deep well?
I didn't get you clear.
You spoke about two climate resilient wells
Yes.
in the hinterland.
Yes.
Is it only two that you have at the moment that is deep, that is dug?
No, we haven't. Let me say, Jailal will answer that question.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
The deep wells.
How many?
Thank
Because
you.
you said the hinterland is hard hit.
Yes.
Thank you for the question. Well, the hinterland has more than 240 Amerindian communities and settlements. Within those communities, we have about 75% of the population has access to water. Now, many of the residents access water through deep wells, shallow wells, and surface sources. The deep wells, we have quite a number of deep wells in the hinterland. Let's say, for example, Region 9. Region 9 has 57 communities, and in those 57 communities, we have over 70 deep wells. So when we say deep wells, these are wells that are drilled to a depth more than 100, 150 feet. And so those wells are standing up resilient, reacting to the situation right now. Those that are affected are the ones that are shallow, 30 feet, 20 feet, the hand-dug wells, and more importantly, the springs. The springs we're seeing significant depletion, as Mr. Bash would have said. And that's just a summary for Region 9. We have many deep wells in the other regions, Region 1, 7, and 8 as well.
Okay.
For those shallow wells, I know we're focused on drilling new wells, but for those that are 30 feet and below, do you intend to revisit that in the future, to take them deeper?
Yes, as a matter of fact, as part of our situation analysis and our program over the next 3 years, those communities that have shallow well and are using water from the springs, we're phasing that down to have drilled wells. In some communities, we're having successful wells. As a matter of fact, we have contracts for drilling of about 15 wells in Region 9 that are going to take place over the next 2 months. And many of those communities have shallow wells, so we're going to phase out the shallow wells, the hand-dug wells, and use the deeper wells. So there is a plan, and over the next 2.5 years, we will definitely phase out all of the hand-dug wells to have more resilient wells.
Any other question?
Yes. Any other points you want to raise of concern which may have been reported to the media?
You mentioned on the coastal areas, the demand is more higher now. What was it before? Is it now?
In terms of what?
The water supply.
Water supply? Okay, Mr. Baran.
Yes, what has been happening is that as you're aware, there are a lot of residents who practices rainwater harvesting. So most of those residents now, because of the lack of rainfall, are switched on to pipe water. So you're looking at more than 40% of the population now moving towards our pipe water system. So that has created additional demand on our system. And as such, throughout the system, you will find that, particularly in the extreme end of the network, you'll find that there is a drop in level service. So that's the impact we're feeling right now.
And if I could comment, this is a similar situation in the hinterland. Many of the residents would have been practicing rainwater harvesting, and the rain would have been falling every week and so on. They use rainwater. Now, everybody is dependent on the wells and the pipe infrastructure from GWI, and so there is higher demand. In some communities, we have to do water rationing. Like Madia, we are supplying sections of the community as per schedule, and so everyone don't get water at the same time, and because this is due to the fact of the depletion of the sources.
Any other question?
Okay.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to this presentation. I declare it closed. Medical professional is